Yeah, it takes a little bit to figure this Zoom thing out, mate.
Saying to do. Start video.
There we go.
There we go, mate.
So, firstly, mate, I really do apologise about this afternoon. I fell asleep. I was up at 4:30 this morning with babies and stuff like that, and had a nap this afternoon. My missus took my phone out of the room, so I do apologise.
That's all good, buddy. No worries.
So, thank you for doing this interview with me, mate. I know you're a busy man these days with your gym, full of fitness. You know, it's been taken off here in Perth for a while now. You've been doing that over here for a while.
Yeah, mate. 20 years. So when I retired back in 2000, I set up my own personal training business, and we operated out of Subiaco on Rockaby Road for 20 years. And then due to COVID, we moved the business into Lord's Recreation Centre there in Wembley, and it's just the last year's been amazing. Been great.
Yeah, cool. What made you come back to Perth after retiring, though?
Well, when I signed for the Western Reds back in '93, we were all sent to England to play, and I went over there and played for Wakefield Trinity. And then we assembled here in the end of '94, played the '95, '96, '97 season. Then obviously they were kicked out of the competition due to the Super League war with the NRL, and I went back to England, played for Wakefield Trinity, and I always had a home here in Menning, in WA, and then I come back here, and I thought it was a great spot. After retiring in 2000, after having a couple of seasons in Sydney, I come back to WA and set up my business.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, speaking of your career, mate, you've played for a couple of teams, mate. I'm just going to run through a couple of them. You played for Canterbury, St George, South, as you mentioned, Wakefield, Western Reds. You even got the captain of the Western Reds at some point. Wakefield, which when you returned, you went back as captain, and then you finished up in Western Suburbs before they become the West Tigers.
Yeah, look, it's a funny journey. It was one of those that I was got a scholarship first to St Gregory's College, Campbelltown, and back then the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs had paid for the scholarship, so you had to play for that club to repay their faith. And I always thought I was going to be a one-club player, and I was at the Bulldogs for 3 years. Started off in first grade a little bit, and then reserve grade, and then went back to the 21s where we won a premiership in '91. And look, the Roosters come knocking, would you believe? So the Roosters actually offered me really good money, and I had no idea what I was doing, and I stuffed the deal up and end up looking for a club, and it ended up being St George Dragons at the time, and Brian Smith was the head coach, and Rod Reddy the reserve grade coach, and I had a fantastic season there. Played a number of first grade games, and mainly starting in reserve grade. But at the end of the season, Brian Smith said to me, "Look, we really want you to stay next year, but we can't offer you any money at all." I wasn't educated. I had nothing to fall back on, and I guess I become like a little bit of a mercenary. And to be honest, I was only on 5,000 at the Dragons, and I thought, well, they could at least offer me that for the way I train and play. And the South Sydney Rabbitohs come asking, and I signed a pretty decent contract with them. And then, unfortunately or fortunately, the Western Reds, mate, stepped up, and I reassociated with Peter Mulholland, my schoolboy coach. And when you go from 15,500 to 100,000 the following year, I guess no one would begrudge you taking that money and coming over to WA.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Absolutely. I mean, that's a hell of a lot of money from what you were earning. The last season that you play in the ARL, NRL is with Western Suburbs. You play the final game for the club before they do merge with West Tigers. Do you have any memories or feelings about that game, being playing for the Western Suburbs?
Firstly, it was a famous club. They've been around since 1908. We had the great Tom Radonic as our head coach. We only won 3 games all year, and I remember I'd almost pulled the pin at the start of that season. I'd just come back from England, and then Western Suburbs actually phoned me and said, look, they need a defender. They told me I wouldn't be playing hooker, as they had Cherry Mesher there at the time. Was a great hooker, tough as they come, Cherry. And they said, but Tommy said, look, you'll be playing anywhere in the pack, but I'll give you an opportunity. I was on a lot of money per game. We only won 3 games all year, but we had a hell of a time. It was a great year in terms of the spirit at the club. The club, Western Suburbs Magpies, are just loved by a lot of people, and we weren't we weren't too good on the field, but gee, we had a lot of fun off the field. And that last game, I think we got beat by the Warriors 60 to something. And I remember running out thinking that this could well be my last first grade game. And as it turned out to be, it certainly was. And I remember I spoke to Wayne Pearce about going to the West Tigers in 2000, but unfortunately they had already signed a number of players that are on long-term contracts. I was only on one contract at the time, which meant they would have either had to cut someone or then pay over and above for me. So in the end, I decided that I was going to retire, and I thought at the time it was a good move.
Yeah, cool. That's pretty insightful sort of for the Western Suburbs supporters out there. I mean, there's lots of them still out there. Like you said, they're a 1908 club, so it's pretty.
I'm not one for merging clubs, so I'm a traditionalist. I like the St George. I don't like the St George Illawarra. I like the Western Suburbs. I like the Balmain. As a young kid growing up, I was a Balmain supporter. Wayne Pearce was my favourite player of all time. He was Mr. Professional. I tried to base everything I did as a young kid around him and his professionalism and his approach to the game. And when the Balmain Tigers merged with Western Suburbs to become the West Tigers, I stopped supporting them and found another club. So for the last 20 years, I've been going for the South Sydney Rabbitohs. I'm extremely passionate about South, but I wish the Balmain was still in the competition. I wish all the city clubs were in the competition. And I think now, if the NRL wanted really, truly national competition, they certainly have to resubmit a team from WA to be that 18th team. I know you got the Broncos shirt on, and you must love your Queensland, but I think now having 4 Queensland sides enough. Obviously the Dolphins, based out of Redcliffe there, and I think they'll be extremely popular around that area. But I think for now, if the NRL really want a truly national competition, they really have to bring in a side from the Western Suburbs, from West over here. I can't see it being a team from the Central Coast, and I can't see it being a team from New Zealand. So it just makes sense to me when the television deal is done again in 2023. It makes a hell of a lot of sense that we can have a team here in the West. The time frame and the location of playing another live game a week is very attractive to the NRL. I know that the Western Reds former board committees are in talks with the NRL at the moment, and trying to see where they stand in the pecking order and what they have to do to get their hat in the ring. But I can tell you now that they've come up with the $10 million to give a guarantee to have their bid absolutely looked at and submitted.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome because as you noticed that I am a Broncos supporter, but if the Western team came back in, I mean, I'd definitely be buying membership to show my support behind the Perth team because I live here. I grew up here. I spent my first part of my life in Brisbane and New South Wales, but for me, home is Perth. And yeah, for us to have a rugby league team, mate, it'd mean the world to me. I'd always be a diehard Broncos man, but I'd also support the Western Australian team. So, because that's also the point of my page. My page is to promote the local clubs here in WA, get more people involved in rugby league here in Perth, and to also do promote NRL stuff because there is so many diehard NRL fans here.
Well, look, I know the club was made defunct in '97, but I still get asked about the Western Reds all the time, and there was hell of a lot of support out there. I can remember, going to the WACA on a Friday night and just feeling pumped to play in front of that crowd. The people were fantastic here in WA. They love their rugby league. I think we've paid our penance for joining Super League. I think it's time that a WA side should be heard at and looked at very seriously. I don't think money would be a problem. We come from a very rich state. There's a lot of mining people here that would love to back a rugby league franchise. In saying that, they probably would have to hit the ground running and make sure they bought well. But as we've seen before, when it was just the NRL or the ARL, whatever you want to call it, back at the time when the Reds joined the competition, we were very competitive. That year we played 22 games. We had the likes of Brad Mackay, Mark Dyer. They were the catalyst for a great season, and we won 11 games out of 22 and was very competitive. We only got beat by St George late in that year just to miss out on making a semi-final berth. So we had a competitive team. Unfortunately, at the end of that 95 seasons, the rumbling started about the Super League competition. I was actually on holidays when we got the phone call about having secret meetings there at the Crown Casino. It was exciting, and then it was a bit nervous as well because obviously no one knew what was going to happen. And I'd signed a 3-year deal with the Western Reds at the time, and then they become the Perth Reds, joined the Super League. I don't think the NRL at the time set the WA side up for success. I thought and actually it was very poorly handled. It was doomed from the start. Not a lot of people know this, but not only did we have to pay for our own flights and our own accommodations going over east, we also had to pay for the team coming over as well. So at one stage, we're going to put in one senior team, and then suddenly we had to have reserve grade, then we had to have another Red-Ends, and obviously that's why they jumped ship so quickly, because Super League offered them all this guarantee and support for the next couple of years, which they thought they were going to grow the game, but we now know that they really just wanted it for the Foxtel rights, which they eventually won. And there was a couple of scapegoats at the time, and obviously the Adelaide Rams and the Western Reds were part of that scapegoat, which obviously, I think it's time. Every time, whether it be the South Sydney Rabbitohs, the Melbourne Storm, the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, or the Warriors for that fact, come to WA, it's such a great spectacle. How many games you could probably remember that were played in the pissing down rain here in Perth, and we still got a full house to the game, and everyone was so happy. The pubs were full. Yeah. And if we turn our attention to a couple of years ago, the State of Origin, I've never seen anything like that ever before. I haven't even seen an atmosphere like that, either going to Queensland or going to New South Wales to watch the State of Origin. Game 2 here at Optus Stadium is something that I'll never forget. I remember walking around the stadium around lunchtime, and the people were just heaving out of the pubs. There was blue and maroon everywhere. There was an excitement in the air. And I think it's WA put on one of the greatest ever sporting spectacles. And the true game itself was played in such a great spirit. It started raining a little bit late, but it was the night that New South Wales absolutely belt Queensland and then set up for that series win in Game 3.
Yeah, definitely. I was at that game as well, and like you said, the crowd support was just off the charts. I was sitting I went to the pub outside beforehand. You were lining up for 10 minutes to get a beer. It was ridiculous. And then I've seen people in the crowd that weren't rugby league supporters, but they one guy I knew who lived in Kalgoorlie came all the way in just for Origin. And it shows the support that WA does have for rugby league. And we've got the next Game 2 next year as well. I mean, I can't see why we wouldn't be able to do the exact same thing again.
Oh, absolutely. That'll be a sellout, no worries. I think especially on the back of the Origin that was here a couple of years ago. And as you said, it was just such a great spectacle. And even if you're not a rugby league supporter, everybody has heard of State of Origin. And I know a lot of people that are diehard AFL supporters or soccer supporters for that matter. But when it comes to State of Origin, they always watch the 3 games. They're passionate about it. They either go for New South Wales or Queensland, and they get on the back of it. They've got the jerseys on. They have a lot of fun, and I guess it's that time of year where you can put down your loyalty for your own sport and follow our great game of rugby league. And what a showcase State of Origin is. It's none tougher. I got the headlines once to be selected as New South Wales hooker, and that's all I got was the headlines. And unfortunately, I didn't get to play, but it's something that I would have loved to play at. And I think, I can remember as a kid from 1980, I was 10 years of age, and I've never missed a State of Origin game, and it was great. My young boy, he's 16 now, but at the time he hadn't seen New South Wales win a series. He's turned 9, and we went to Sydney to watch Game 3, and with the game in the balance, and we got the win. It was something that I'll never forget, sitting in that crowd watching the State of Origin as a New South Wales supporter, having my young son there watching his first series win, when on the back of that great Queensland side with Billy Slater, Cam Smith, and Cooper Cronk at the helm. And that was just an unbelievable side. It was Inglis. It's just unbelievable. And even though I think 9 in the row was enough, I think it done so much good for State of Origin when you had so much dominance, and New South Wales really had to fight hard to try and win a bit of respect back. And that's what I love about the game. And we saw We saw the Dragons do it in the NRL Premiership when they won 11 in a row. It hasn't never been done before, and it would never probably be done again. But you know, I'm one of those who absolutely love the record books and love trying to get back what was probably, you know, ours at the start, and then we lost our way a little bit back Queensland. What a great side.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I remember the 4 series in a row that New South Wales won. And then, you know, you heard the rumblings of, you know, people not getting as interested in it because they were becoming sort of blowouts and stuff. And then, you know, Queensland won the series, and then it sort of turned into a 1 series Queensland, 1 series New South Wales, and then it did go into that dominance. And I think, you know, from like my point of view watching it, it sort of gave that fire to New South Wales that I guess Queensland's always had, and that's what they rely on when the chips are down, is that the backs are against the wall, and enough is enough sort of thing. And I think that's you know, what gave New South Wales that win was they've gone, no, enough of this. We've had enough. We need to win this series, and let's get out and do it. And you know, it worked.
Yeah, well, I think Brad Fittler's been a breath of fresh air for the New South Wales Blues. He's very unorthodox, but great bloke, Freddie, and certainly is very passionate about his rugby league. Has a great following, and he recruited well when he got into head coach. I thought he did some great things for New South Wales. I know that we lost the unlosable series, which we don't talk about very often. They gave Queensland no opportunity to win that series, and then we got belted once again. And I think that just goes to show that, you know, the character of guys once they put on that Maroons jersey. If you look at one I hate talking about, mine, Dane Gagai. And sometimes I thought, you know, he could have done a lot better for South Sydney, although he had a great season this year. But put on a maroon jersey, and that guy just went 10 foot tall. He was unbelievable. And I think, you know, it's great. And I know it's an old cliche, mate against mate and state versus state, but it's something that I think rugby league looks towards every year as their showpiece on the calendar. And it's something that it just excites pretty much Australia, and not if all around the world, with our great game and a great spectacle that we have each year.
Yeah, absolutely, buddy. I couldn't agree more with that statement. Who was your inspiration as a child, mate? And what about you inspired you?
Well, my inspiration was Peter Mulholland. He's the St. Gregory's College Campbelltown coach. I was kicked out of home when I was 14 and lived in a caravan for 3 years. I couldn't read and write till I was 25. A bloke who was playing, a mate of mine, were playing SG ball for Parramatta at the time, Rod Collins, asked me to try out for the Australian schoolboys team. I had no idea what he was on about or what the process was, and went all the way through in '95 to make the Australian schoolboys team. And then I signed a scholarship with Peter Mulholland to go to St. Gregory's College, Campbelltown, and then end up making 2 more Australian schoolboys, and that kind of set me on my path. But Peter Mulholland was more like a dad figure to me. He was a guy that taught me how to be respectful. He taught me how to behave on and off the field, and showed me a lot of love and a lot of support and a lot of belief. And I think kids out there today just need a bit of cuddle every now and again. They need some tough love, but they need to know that they're you know, to follow their dreams, and they need to know that if someone's got their back and believes in them, that, you know, the sky's the limit as long as you've got a good work ethic and you work hard towards what you want. But yeah, without a doubt, Peter Mulholland is my number one.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome. You know, obviously a big figure with the Western Reds as well. Was there a dark time during your sporting life or anything like that? You know, you mentioned just before that you were kicked out of home when you were young. Yeah, obviously that would have been a dark time in your life, but was there anything as you got a bit older that sort of become dark again? And if so, how did you deal with it?
I've always been a really positive person, and I think, you know, I know there's in today's society that we have a lot of mental health problems and things like that. For me, it was more about accepting retirement and probably looking towards living a life that I wanted to live without having a number on my back. For a long time there, I thought, you know, if I wasn't a rugby league player, I wasn't a person. And, you know, and I've said many times, you know, I went to bed one night as Matt Fuller, the rugby league player, and woke up next day as just Matt Fuller. And it was pretty daunting. I probably went off the rails a little bit, probably drinking too much and going out and partying and whatnot. But for mine, I'm very lucky that I've been extremely lucky with my life, that even though I was kicked out of home at a young age and probably had some learning difficulties, that I always believed in my own ability as a person and my own fitness. And my training was my outlet. So I wasn't into drugs. I wasn't into alcohol when I was younger. And therefore that released a lot of energy. I got into boxing. And I still box today twice a week because I just love hitting the bag, and I just love the feeling that it just lets out all that negative energy that you've got in your body. But I think for mine, once I got over retirement and started dealing with the niggling injuries and things like that, you probably had a bit of self-doubt crept in at times, and I wouldn't say that I ever looked back and said, was it worth it? Because it's worth it 100%. It's worth it, and I'll do it all again. I just think you have to find that super strength inside you to know that you're not going to be part of a team. You're not going to be signing autographs. You're not going to be having the photos all the time. You're not going to be having the pats on the back and getting all the free gear that comes along with being a sports star. But in saying that, I wouldn't swap anything. And I think if you take the lessons you learned from sport and you put them into your own life, you're going to be successful.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome. Have you got any advice for the young kids of Perth, mate? Getting into any sort of high level sports, or even the adults? Obviously yourself with the fitness stuff as well. Being a professional athlete and your gym. Have you got any advice for kids wanting to get into that high level sport?
Well, yeah, for Sard, you've got to work harder than everyone else. When you think your mates are resting, you've got to be working, and you've got to work smart. You've got to believe in your own ability. And these days now, we've got so many opportunities to set yourself up for after sport. I think, for me, I put all my eggs in one basket, and I was so driven to become a rugby league player, and that's all I wanted to do. I didn't have a plan B. Well, that's fine, but I think today you've got a lot of pathways, especially with the vet programs that are on there. They offer young kids that you can have something on the side and get an education and learn different skills, but you've got to focus on your rugby league. You've got to focus on your fitness. And if you believe that you're strong in something, keep working on it. If you've got a weakness, work at that as well. But you've got to believe in your own ability. And you can't be afraid to cop a bit of a knock on the chin. And by that, I mean, if you get pulled aside and say, hey, mate, you've got to pull your finger out, or you're not doing this good, or you're not doing that good. I think today we tend to get upset with those type of people that look down on us or try and give us some strong advice, and we get upset because that's not how we should be spoken to. But at the end of the day, I think, if you're going to play rugby league, which is the toughest sport in the world, you've got to take a little bit of criticism, whether it be from your peers, from your coaching staff, or people that matter for that mind. But you just got to be willing to learn, and you have to work hard. Your work ethic is everything to me.
Yep. Would you consider being involved with the new Perth team if they do get a license?
Look, I've already had talks with a few of the old guys from the Western Reds, and I'm certainly, obviously, my background is in fitness and strength and conditioning. So if something come up along those lines, I'd have a look at it. A lot of people give me way too much credit and say, what about coaching, or what about getting into coaching? I've never wanted to get into coaching. I think you've got to be more of a player management these days, and rather than a coach. And those guys have been in the system for a long, long time, whether it's over East, New South Wales or Queensland. They come out of playing their professional sport, and they've gone into a coaching role, and they've gone right through the ranks and done everything they should do on a pathway up to a head coach. But obviously I've been in WA far too long now, and although I've applied my trade in other areas, which is health and fitness, and I think if there's an opportunity there, I'll definitely have a look at it. But definitely from an old boy's point of view, I know I didn't think 20 years later I'd still have the club records for playing the most games and the most tries in a season and the most tackles in a season and all that. But I wish I didn't have it, really, to tell you the truth. Something I'm very proud of, but and it still gets spoken about. But I really wish I didn't have it. I really wish that we had a team back here in Perth, and we're going to and enjoying a cold one, talking about the days that we used to play with a few mates, and that whether it be at Nib Stadium or anywhere else. That's what I think I've been robbed of. A lot of the guys have, a lot of these clubs, invite their past players back, and you have nights, and you have, get them to mingle with the crowd, and they love talking about, their days as a player. I remember, going to watch an Eagles game not so long ago against Collingwood, and a lot of the old boys were up on the terrace and having a few beers with the locals and a few of the the punters and that, and people just love it. They love mingling in those circles, and they know that at the end of the day, a guy, you might be respected being as a footballer, but if you're a decent bloke and you can hold a bit of a conversation and have a bit of a laugh, you'll be well respected. And I think people love hanging out with those type of sports people.
Oh, absolutely, mate. Yeah. It makes a hell of a lot of difference, because these people looked up to those sort of people when they were watching the sports, and for them to have a beer and a chat with them, makes the world for them. How's your gym going at the moment, mate? You mentioned before that you've had a pretty good last 12 to 18 months. How else has it been going with it?
It's been brilliant, actually. It's been a godsend there. I moved the personal training business into Lords, and there in Wembley, and I haven't looked back. It's been great. I've not had to worry about staff. I've not had to worry about overheads. I pay a license fee to use the gym. I'm doing about 75 PT sessions a week. It's absolutely fantastic. I can really concentrate on what I like, and that's just training people, having a bit of fun with people. Obviously, you're seen as a bit of a mentor, and you do a lot of life coaching at times, but that's part and parcel of the job. But at the end of the day, moving down there and not having the responsibility of actually running your own business, we did it for 20 years, and I think going to Lords, I've just signed another 3-year contract there. I've just extended my contract. I'm loving it down there. The people are great to work for, and generally the people inside the gym are there. They're all like-minded people, whether they be young or old. It's got a really good vibe, and it's got a really good village feel to it, and that's what I love and respect.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome to hear. Did you find it an easy transition going from being a professional sports player into the fitness world?
Easy in the sense that I was always fit, and I knew that I could train people. But once you learn that skill of how to train people and what you need to do with people to get them motivated or to make sure you don't kill them in the first couple of weeks, that was a little bit harder, because at first I used to train people like I trained, and nearly burn a few people. But certainly, I think it was pretty smooth in the sense that I was always passionate about health and fitness, and I was good at it. I knew it inside and out. So from that perspective, yes. And funny enough, on Saturday night, I recently just went to a 50th, and the guys whose birthday it was my first ever client here in WA, who gave me $1,000 and said, "Sheepy, I want you to train my wife and I don't know how many sessions I get for that." And he was my first client, and I trained him for ages, and he set me up a few other people. And then once we started building the business up, it just grew and grew and grew. And I took it from a mobile personal training business to inside a gym. We ran the gym for 20 years. And to me, COVID was a bit of a blessing, and where a lot of people feared COVID, I really rejoiced in it. Although we went through purgatory at the time, and it cost us a lot of money, paying trainers out, paying our clients out to make sure that everyone left. We left a lot of goodwill there, and obviously it was a bit daunting going down to Lords at first, and then but the first week I was there, I remember coming home and saying to my wife Naomi that this is where I can see I'm going to be here for a long time. I just really loved it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good mate of yours, MG's got his own personal gym over in Penrith, mate. Have you been watching a bit of his stuff on Instagram and stuff like that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I follow MG Active very closely, and we've had a couple of talks about the way he set it up, and in the early days. But MG's one of those characters. He's tailor made for that type of industry. He's loved by a lot of people over there. Another mate of mine, Spud Carroll. Mark Carroll's got his own little gym going. We speak quite often, Spud and I. Look, they've done it a bit tougher than what we have with COVID. I know that when COVID struck, our gym shut down for 3 months solid. And then we've only had 2 weeks, two lots of 1 weeks and a 4 days. So we've been pretty lucky, really. But they're killing the pig over there, so to speak. And obviously they have a great profile and a great following in Sydney. And MG is just an out and out dead set legend. I was his roommate for 3 years. He's done really well for himself after rugby league, as has Spud Carroll. Yeah, I'm having a chat with MG on Thursday. So I've already had one interview with him, and he's like, "Yep, anytime you need an interview, just ring me or message me, and we'll sort something out." So, have you got a message for him for me to pass on for you? Yeah, mate, he's a crazy cat, old MG, but I tell you what, I love him and I'm very proud of him for what he's done after rugby league. You know, a lot of people thought MG was a loose cannon and was a psychopath, but the guy is one hell of a bloke. He's got a heart of gold. The amount of hugs I've had of him over the years, and he's just a very, very affectionate man. He's got a beautiful family. And just, mate, he knows that I know I'm proud of him and what he's done with his life in radio and in the gym recently. Yeah, he should be super proud of himself as well.
Yeah, cool. I'll definitely pass that on to him, mate. Have you got any other inspirational sort of advice for people these days? You know, whether they want to get into fitness. Have you got any advice for people? Like myself. I'm not, obviously, as you can see, I'm not exactly fit myself, but I can train people. I'm training my son at the moment, and I've got one of my partner's cousins. He wants me to train him for rugby league next year. He plays local league. And because I've played league myself, I know I'm one of those people that those that can't do teach. You know, and I've been able to. I'm going to start with him this week and go down to the local park and start training him up for what I think he needs for rugby. Have you got any advice for people like myself that are trying to get into that sort of stuff?
Yeah, well, look, if it's for yourself, you're trying to create a business out of it. I think, you know, it's these days. I think people look at a product and they look at the person, and that's how you're going to build your business. So, unfortunately or fortunately, you know, if you're going to build a clientele, they want to see that you're fit. They want to see that you can walk the talk. That's how we are, and whether it be right or wrong. You know, but to train your son and to train people that you know, if you're happy being you and you don't need to change, then I wouldn't be changing for anybody. But I have a lot of people that I take on for work experience, and the first thing I tell them is that if they're able enough to or smart enough to, I would get into PE teaching first, and on the back of that, because that obviously PE teaching would give you around $75,000 a year, and then you can supplement your income up to 100,000 plus. With personal training in the afternoons and evenings. There's a lot of hell of a sessions that are still available from 4 o'clock right through to 9 o'clock where most gyms close. So, you know, for my advice to people looking to get in the fitness industry is firstly get into PE teaching and then do a personal training course to be able to train clients outside of work. But then you've got that base forever. You know, I'm very fortunate that I was able to, you know, get into a business and build it up and be in it for 20 odd years. You know, but if I had my time again, I probably would have taken my own advice and gone into PE teaching.
Yeah, right. That's all I have for you today, mate. I really appreciate your time. Sorry about the stuff up earlier. But yeah, I'll tell the fans that do watch or follow my page, mate, to get onto Fuller Fitness. You know, down in Wembley there. Was it Lords, is it?
Yeah, Lords there in Subiaco, mate. If Sheepy Fuller can't get you fit, no one can get you fit.
That's the way, mate. Beautiful.
Right, Jamie, mate. Thanks very much for having me on your show. Much appreciated.
Thanks, buddy. You have a good night.
Cheers, buddy.
See ya.
See you, mate.